Haita Wonne Hiromi Aibin. I'm Hiromi, the creative lead for Scion, and I'm here with the fantastic Geoffrey and the wonderful Monica, whom I will let introduce themselves. And then after they do so, we'll reintroduce Geoffrey because he will undoubtedly be too modest.
Hi, I'm Monica. You probably know me from a bunch of other things. I'm a Scion developer. I'm an Exalted developer. I've written on a bunch of stuff. My name's in a lot of books, especially if you're an OPP fan. I'm the developer of what we're about to talk about, so that's why I'm here.
And I am Geoffrey, freelancer for Onyx Path, almost entirely for Scion. And the topic that we're discussing today is one that's very close to my heart. So, Hiromi and Monica were kind enough to let me join in this conversation.
I don't know that kindness is quite the... So, here's where we begin bragging on Geoffrey. So, Scion Once and Future is about the Arthurian cycle and Welsh mythology, which is one of Geoffrey's areas of ridiculous amounts of expertise. He is one of North America's preeminent scholars on the topic. Like, you can look up his name and find credentials that will just break your desk with the amount of material. We're very lucky to have you, Geoffrey, and having you be able to do what you love for Scion and kind of like marry these two interests together is absolutely fantastic. I'll toss it back to Monica to introduce the rest of what Once and Future is about.
Oh, hell yeah, of course. So Once and Future is a Scion supplement, which I figured you could guess from the fact that the three of us are here talking about it. But it is specifically a Scion supplement about playing Arthurian characters. And it ties into demigods, so we kind of talk about the three phases, and Once and Future kind of really digs into what it means to have a mantle, and what it means to create it and shape it, and then because the state of being a demigod is a place where you can totally fuck up, we also talk about what happens if you don't finish completing your mantle, and then we use Arthur as an example of an incomplete mantle, and how you can do that in your own games, and of course how you can pick up Arthur's mantle and finish it, and all that very cool stuff. But it also contains 3 adventures, one in the past, one in the present, and one slightly in the future, at the origin level, the hero level, and the demigod level. And they kind of have a through line. You can, in fact, play them in order if you want to, but you don't have to. They are all also standalone adventures. And I believe the past adventure, the origin level adventure, is based on the Green Knight story.
Yes.
Yeah. I say like I didn't develop it. It's been a minute, you guys. It's been a minute.
It's been 2+ years.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I had to refresh my memory on the specifics of what was in there. We also have a bunch of... Because Scion is a modern game, we have a whole section on like changing the Scion rules to reflect playing in the past, and applying things like scale to what happens when you have a horse in in a historical combat situation, right? And a lot of cool back-facing stuff if you really want to play ye olde fantasy Arthurian myth.
The second of the adventures is mine, and
yes.
is based on Grail Quest, and it is essentially what happens with Grail Quests in Scion. I'd tell you more about what I mean by that, but that's a plot spoiler, so you're just gonna have to play it yourself.
Gonna have to play it and find out, yeah. I loved the adventures. When I remember reading them and then read over them again, I was like, oh damn, these are all so good. I'm really excited for everyone to have them. And I'm going to fully admit that I'm not a pre-packaged adventure person. And y'all just blew it out of the water. They're really cool, and I'm excited for everyone to have them.
And with every Pantheon we do in Scion, we try to do as much justice as we can to the various stakeholders constellated around the mythology. It's never a simple thing to just sort of like copy paste from the existent texts and sources, because it's a matter of being faithful to the original material, being faithful to the gods and other powerful entities within those stories, being faithful to the culture that created them at the time and the culture that currently holds them. All of those are important. It's very difficult to do all of them justice, but I think Geoffrey did, because holy crap, Plankton is fantastic. Now, I'll let you talk about what all that means.
So a little backstory before I get into it.
Please.
This was actually the reason that I was originally brought onto Scion. Before Scion Origin was written, Neil, who was in charge of things, said, "Oh, wait, you know Welsh mythology, and I want to do an Arthurian book. So why don't you come and do some writing for us?" And then all these years later, I'm still doing writing for Scion. And we're finally getting the chance for me to write this. Before the contract was even out for Once and Future, it was like, yep, no, boom. Here's the entire Welsh pantheon written up. Yeah, sorry, just had that lying around. I don't know, thought it might come in handy. So yes, I've been looking at this for a while, and it is, I mean, unlike other pantheons, this is almost entirely a literary creation, which fits well with the Arthurian side of the book. We know next to nothing about the religion that was practiced in that part of Britain back in the day. The stories themselves are historically somewhat incoherent, in that you will get one story that seems to be making references to the Roman invasion of Britain, and then the next story with the same characters is really upset about the Normans. And if you go later on into the Mabinogi, it's like, oh, look, William the Conqueror is apparently one of Arthur's knights. Sure, that's fine. So I had to take a lot of material here, or at least a lot of ideas, and condense them down into we'll say, a Scion-appropriate form. And I like to think I did a decent version of that. There are a couple of the deities in there that I'm especially proud of. And I think, I think there will be something for everyone. Oh, and the Pantheon signature purview, which is essentially, why can't we all just get along a little better? What magical things can happen when we do? I'm happy with that as well.
Pretty important ability to have, especially when your own history doesn't necessarily jive with what's going on.
Even in the stories, it's both a strength and a flaw. It can be a strength, and this is built into the virtues of the Pantheon, for those paying attention. When you decide, no, let's step back and talk about this, but it can be a flaw when you spend so much time talking about it that you don't actually do anything. Which is why the balancing virtue is, screw it, just go out, do something heroic. Don't listen to anyone else. It's fine. What's the worst that could possibly... Oh my god, all of Britain has disappeared. Oh.
It's fine. Just, like, put up a poster and write Britain on it. No, tell the difference.
No one's worried about that. You said you had two you were particularly proud of, and I want to know which ones.
Yes.
Oh, of the deities?
Of the deities.
Yes, yeah.
No, these are actually tied. So we'll do it alphabetically.
Okay, that's fair. Very diplomatic.
Aran'throd, or Arian'throd, whichever you prefer, turns up in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi as mostly just an obstacle to the hero. She is the mother of Tlei Gophis, Tleo the Skillful Hand, and after she gives birth to him in rather embarrassing circumstances, because it's a test to see whether or not she's a virgin. She wasn't. Although that's messy. She refuses to give him a name unless she gives it to him. She refuses to let him have arms and armor unless she gives it to him. She finally learns her lesson from the first two loopholes she put in and says, fine, he is never having a wife of any race that is on the earth right now. And the thing that I realized after looking back at these stories for a while is that this isn't about her. This is about the fact that her brother, Gwydion, who was an absolute bastard, but also one of my favorites, took her son away from her from the time that he was born until he was 5 years old, and then turns up on her doorstep and says, "Hey, look, I'm an uncle."
What a dick.
He is. He really, really is. Like, all of those characters in TV shows and movies who have to be the smartest person in the room, you know, versions of Sherlock Holmes or House or any of these other things, he is that in the most dickish way possible. He always has to be the smartest. Whether or not it's moral is secondary. It's just like, you have a problem. I can solve your problem. Let's start a war. But anyhow, but with Aran'throd, my read on it is that she's been betrayed by her family, and now her brother has taken her son and raised him without her knowing about it. And all she wants is to have some say in his life. Let me give him his name. Let me be the one who tells him when he's gone from being a boy to a man. Let me have a voice in who he marries. But over and over again, Gwydion says no and just tries to trick her out of that. I have a lot of sympathy for her. As someone who's been screwed over and betrayed by her family. So, one of my favorites. The other favorite is in a very different tenor. Gwyn ap Nudd, the war god who hates war. In the literary sources, one of the earliest references we get to him is in early Welsh poem in which a hero turns up on a battlefield after the battle is done. And there's Gwyn ap Nudd. And he's just there. And the tone of the poem is that he is so exhausted by all of this that he has to watch this carnage go on. And he knows how it's going to turn out. And he knows that if he's on the battlefield, he will be the only one left standing. In one of his later appearances in the story Cilchwch and Olwen, he's described as the man in whom God put all the power of the demons of hell so that they do not destroy the world. It's not a great position to be in, when someone decides to go to war against him, he captures that man's son, cuts his heart out, and feeds it to the father, because he's not a very nice god. And as a way to say, don't do this. Don't start these kinds of wars. So Gwynap Neath in Once and Future is the god of that kind of frightening violence. He's the god who survives when everyone else dies. I hope it's still in there somewhere, there's a note that you can tell when his incarnations come into the world because there has been some terrible disaster and one person has walked away from it intact.
Yes, that's still there.
That's still there. They still bear the scars and the trauma of it, but they're the one who survives. And most of the Scions that he chooses are the ones who survive when everyone else around them has died. It's not a good position to be in, but you do what you have to do. So yes, so those I would count as my favorites.
Both very hard-hitting and relatable with respect to very specific traumas. As you were sort of delving deeper into the literary, I'm like, yes, surviving. I'm a combat veteran. A lot of people didn't come home. Not to suddenly bring everything down, but...
Well, that just means that we've written something that can be very relatable to a lot of people. There are lots of people who have survived intense violence, whether that's combat, whether that's domestic, whether that's external, like that sort of, I am the person who is left alive, maybe that touch of survivor's guilt, that's deeply relatable to a huge audience, and I think that that's going to land really well with people who like want to connect or have that catharsis with a character who could be their parent and maybe create a relationship between a Scion who has gone through something similar and their god parent who embodies that, and maybe like that there's just a rich space to maybe have a bond, a trauma bond between those two characters, or perhaps a tension between those two characters because they are coping differently. Like, it's very, very fruitful space for catharsis through roleplay.
Yeah, we haven't done like a Scion as therapy book, but like
isn't that all of them though?
I mean, but like for folks who aren't aware, like role-playing as therapy is totally a thing. Like, there's like certifying bodies. I don't know how rigorous their programs are, but anyone who's role-played long enough knows that they can heal through their character. You can also be traumatized through your character, which is why safety tools are important. But there's a book idea.
Maybe some sort of Scion tasty bit or whatever that kind of talks about working through your catharsis using the lens of some of the stuff we've already published. Because we have a lot of material in Scion that can be deeply emotional like that, especially if you want to access it through that approach. And maybe we could put together a quick little supplement about like looking at things like even Titanomachy talking about like the world viewing you as other as a form of trauma too, you know, and like taking those and how you can heal through that. But that is well outside my area of expertise. I just do the DIY version where you impose all your problems onto a fictional character and then work through it in front of your friends.
I mean, it does work.
It sure does. I mean,
if I could add, I would
of course,
say,
go ahead.
One of the things about this particular pantheon, and I think the larger, we'll say, Arthurian realm, is that the Plant Dawn are very human-level figures. They're not world creators. They're not, masters over storms or mountains or anything like that. It's a large dysfunctional family. And I think you've got, I think one of the other deities in there, Bronwen, who's put forward in the book as a goddess of compassion, has that side, because her main role in the stories where she appears is that she suffers through no fault of her own, and watches other people's suffering. And so people who have had those sorts of experiences where they've gone through trauma can also relate to that. They've gone through and they feel other people's pain, whether it's emotional or even if it's something like, the economic pain of doing a minimum wage job just so that you can put food on the table sometimes when you know that you are capable of more. Mm-hmm. There's that kind of relation. And again, switching over to the Arthurian side, we have this entire roster of very flawed characters, some more so than others. But I'm glad that in this book we get the chance to explore those too and see what these incomplete mantles are like and what it means to follow in the footsteps of a particular hero rather than a god. And I hope someone will talk about that now.
I was surface level familiar with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, I mainly through pop culture and the more popular stories. And so when I was getting into this and doing the research, it struck me just how often things echo, and sometimes that echo is perhaps more copy-paste-ish than echo. The first kind of grand Grail quest doesn't involve Arthur, doesn't involve Lancelot. It's Parzival, or nope, not remembering the French name off the top of my head, but the sort of the quests that the Grail questers go on of, okay, so go to this castle, find out what's going on there, go see this person in the woods, find out what's going on with them. Not to be all Joseph Campbell, because fuck Joseph Campbell, but that basic structure of the Grail quests shows up in Western fiction a fair amount. And I'm not trying to be this is the only story that can be possibly told. It's just that it's damn influential. When a story gets repeated several times with different characters, it's kind of natural that you'll hear similar stories told with completely different characters. And it's fascinating to see how mythology influences fiction and culture.
I mean, all good old Joe did was just go, hey, people tell stories like this. And then everyone was like, oh, what a genius. But, that's just, we're still doing that. We're still telling stories in the same way. Someone will create a story that's good, and then a bunch of people will be like, that story was good. I should tell a story like that. And we're still doing it. It's not new. That's human nature. You didn't reveal anything interesting, Joe. Come on.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one who will just dump on it at the drop of a hat.
So I had to study literature because my background is in English actually, and I got tired of him being a thing that professors held up as look at how smart he is about the structure of stories. And I kind of had the same opinion in college as I did right then. Like, yeah, he just pointed out that that's the way storytelling works. Good job, man. Good job.
Just going to say that my PhD advisor knew Campbell very well.
Oh.
And I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
If I can dive in for a little bit.
Yeah, go for
Yes,
it.
please
Dive
do.
right in.
Grail quests. Sorry, my cat has opinions about Grail quests. So you've got, as you say, go to this castle, try to do this thing. Oh, you screwed up. Go to this hermit. See how you can do it properly. Da da da. Grail. There we go. The basic form. It's been on my mind for a long time that in the part of the Grail story where you have the meeting with the Fisher King, who I believe turns up in some form or another, either in the main part of Once and Future or at least in one of the adventures.
He's in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in there.
Good.
He's in there. Don't worry.
Good. There's always a particular question that Percival is supposed to ask that he messes up the first time. One version of the story is, whom does the Grail serve? Another version, and the one that I lean towards myself, is that Percival meets the Grail King, or meets the Fisher King, who is clearly injured, bleeding, carried out on a stretcher, essentially. But because Percival has been told not to ask questions unless someone wants him to, he doesn't say a thing about it. And the question that he was supposed to ask is, what ails you, uncle? And this is the sort of question that I don't want to put too much weight on Scion as a game or role-playing games in general, but it is the sort of question that people have the opportunity to ask and answer through play. You make a certain character, and a good story guide, game master, whichever, will look at that character and say, oh, what's wrong? What are you trying to work out through this? And we'll be able to help you through that. We'll be able to give you the tools and the story opportunities to let you carry on and find some sort of answer. I think Scion is specifically, at least by the time you hit Demigod, specifically built to let you do that, to let you sort of work through some of these questions and answers. And goodness knows, by the time you hit God, and I apologize in advance if I provoke any existential crises in people for some of the sections that I wrote, is definitely intended to do that. But here, with Arthurian stories, it's built into the literature that you should be able to look and just ask and answer the question, what's hurting you right now?
Yeah, no, it's a very poignant thing to pull out. Like, Scion in general, you have, like, players have the ability to take famous stories and legends and myths and reinterpret them in ways that serve them somehow. Like, it could be that they have the desire to interact with the culture of that story, and so they want to sort of feel how the people who first told the story felt. It could be that they have trauma that they're working through and they want to work through that via the lens of the story. It could be that they want to read against the grain of the story and poke at the things that don't make sense, such as the anachronistic elements that you highlighted earlier, where we have very different eras that all apparently coincide. And so, like, Once and Future, I think, is especially well geared towards that kind of play, because it's already been retold several times. Like, the sort of first push of the boulder along its path has already been done. Like, it was done hundreds of years ago. So you just have to keep it rolling and have it not wreck your house in the process.
Not one of my sections, but one that I really appreciated. One of the other authors had some very good things to say about how to deal with canon and the idea of canon in Arthurian stories, although I think it applies to myth in general.
I have a quote in front of me. I am not sure if it's the same one, but I do believe it's by the same author. So
go for it. Take it away.
I'll throw it out there. Canon should be like a properly fitted corset. It should support, not constrict. And if it's constricting, take the damn thing off.
There's also the phrase from the same section that I think is really great, is that canon exists only as far as you want it to exist and depends entirely upon the source you consult. So many different authors, playwrights, and directors over the centuries have adapted Arthurian canon, and the phrase artistic license takes on a new life. Your table need feel no command to get hung up on the fine points of one form or another of canon unless you want to do so. If your playgroup finds the intricacies of Mallory's portrayal of Lancelot and Guinevere interesting, feel free to explore that, but don't feel bound to that particular retelling of the Arthurian cycle. The freedom to reinterpret, to synthesize, to edit mythology to fit the purposes of stories you want to tell is not a bug, it's a feature. This core tenet of mythology as a whole, and Scion's take thereupon especially, applies to the Arthurian mythos. This does not mean that the tales as written hundreds of years ago don't have weight and import, only that you may consider what someone wrote hundreds of years ago in your chronicle's construction, only so much as it gives you life and joy to those playing at the table. And then, of course, it ends with that really fantastic quote.
We're essentially dealing with 1,000+ years of fanfic. Early,
Yeah.
if you go to the really early stories, Arthur is a bit of a dick to saints, specifically. And they punish him for it. And then you go on for a while, and then, he's this sort of ideal king with a couple hundred knights in his court who are named at length. But then they trim it down a little bit, and you get Knights of the Round Table, and then someone says, I'm introducing my new original character, Lancelot, and he's better than everyone. and then someone after that says, I'm introducing my original character, Galahad, and he's better than everyone, especially he's better than Lancelot, who now sucks. And it just goes on and on and on and on. So yeah, keep adding to it. There is so much available in there that I don't think anyone will notice if you stray away from canon.
Now in my head, anytime someone mentions Galahad or Lancelot, I'm gonna imagine a aristocrat with like a pen, like a quill in his hand, standing next to a portrait of himself, but in armor. And then big OC, do not steal at the top.
Exactly. And his eyes change color with his mood, and yeah.
There's a vampire and a werewolf.
Look, there's only room for one werewolf in Arthur's court. It's already been taken.
speaking of knights, there was a thing that some Scion fans were interested in, which is who's your favorite knight and why? I don't know who should go first, so I guess I'll volunteer myself. I like Parzival. And I like his brother, Federfiz, who, depending on the author, is either half black, down the middle, like in the original series Star Trek, or has vitiligo, which is awesome representation. Like, we don't have good vitiligo representation now, but, like, back hundreds of years, that's completely unheard of. And both of them are pretty cool characters. I enjoy them quite a bit. I like Percival especially because he's the OG Grail Knight.
My answer is basically based on what we wrote in the book. So I'm going to answer we have a couple ready-made characters, I think, if I'm remembering right. And I really liked the way Erica wrote Yvain. Literally the lion-headed guy. And then she worked in some ambiguity. Is it a cool helmet? Does he literally have a lion head? Like, what's going on there? And I especially like the take we do on that. So I'm going to use that as a teaser to make people want to go buy the book and see why that's so cool.
Buy the book.
Buy the book. Buy the book.
Geoffrey, who's your favorite knight?
I am not shy about this. Gawain. Oh, not because of the whole Green Knight thing. Although, fine. I can appreciate that. But because later, in one of the tellings of the Quest for the Holy Grail, Gawain, Lancelot, and Galahad meet with a hermit who tells them what they have to do to achieve the Holy Grail. And it's essentially a life of piety and prayer and either chastity or celibacy, I can't remember which. And Galahad is like already doing it. And Lancelot is, yep, I can do that. I mean, you know he's not going to, but at least he tries. But Gawain just hears this and is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. No. Sorry, guys. Yeah, good luck. Have fun. But I'm out. And I appreciate that level of honesty in an Arthurian hero. He knows he is the worldly knight, and that's it. So yeah, I have to admire that.
Yeah, no, that's really legit. It means like that's not my deal. I'm sorry.
It's either that or Arthur's knight from Kilchilchan Olwen, who can throw his beard over all 50 rafters of Arthur's hall. That is his sole ability. He never turns up in the story again. It's just one of those weirdos that hangs out with
What's
Arthur.
your useless power? His is that he can throw his beard up in the ceiling.
Look, there's another guy who can pull his lower lip over his head when he gets sad. So, of the two of them, I think Beardo McBeardy, App Beardy, came out of it much better.
I love the cultural correction there.
That was good.
And now I'm curious, did it specify whether the beard was still attached to him, or if it was like he disconnected it and threw it like a discus? Like, are we talking about his beard is like a grappling hook, like a prehensile beard, or is it like a throwing beard? Because those are different. Neither one is necessarily cooler than the other. They're both really fucking weird.
They are.
But
they're not the weirdest ones in that list. I swear it goes on for 3 or 4 pages listing all of the warriors in Arthur's court. and they're very silly people, which is why one should never go to Camelot. But no, I'm pretty sure it was attached. Forget his name. I want to say it's Dishless.
I won't gainsay you.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're correct. Whatever you said was right.
People can correct me in the comments afterwards. But yes, no, there are some very, very silly people in there. Anyhow, but yes, sorry, Gawain. Gawain was my answer.
Actually, I want to talk about antagonists real quick, since that was a question.
Cool.
Because I really like the antagonist section, which is an appendix at the end of the book, and it is entirely presented like it's a panel at a convention, where the host is walking everyone through this collection of mythological creatures from, the Arthurian mythos or from Welsh mythology, with a sprinkling of some other cool creatures in there as well, because we dipped into a little other things. The antagonist section always has some fun, fresh takes on things. But the way it is presented is a hoot, and if you buy the book for nothing else, the very entertaining antagonist section is well worth it.
Do you remember how many questing beasts we had?
A bunch, but I think it's one template you can modify, if I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and then the Scion who is giving the presentation has a write-up too, so you can have them appear as a character in your games as well.
The whole book is delightful. The two of you are delightful. The writers on the book, the whole thing was just tons of fun, and I can't wait for folks to get their hands on this, because I'm pretty sure they're going to have a ton of fun as well.
Me too.
Any closing things that either of y'all want to throw in?
Thanks for listening. Buy the book.